For decades, Studio Ghibli has undoubtedly made better movies than Pixar. They have succeeded where Pixar has failed. But why is this the case? What is Ghibli doing that leaves a lasting impact that Pixar can't seem to replicate? To understand why Studio Ghibli succeeds where Pixar fails, we need to first learn the philosophical differences between these two studios. Pixar's belief seems to be that a story exists to thrill and resolve, whereas Ghibli's is for feeling and reflection. At Pixar, a story is often built on a clear emotional truth. Every hit film tries to appeal to some core truth about being alive, whether the characters are toys, monsters, fish, or robots. Directors and writers routinely draw from real life to find that truth. Pete Docter, for example, rewrote Monsters, Inc. around fatherhood when he had his first child. Andrew Stanton says his own worries about his son inspired Finding Nemo. These personal cores give Pixar its heart. Children and parents see themselves in the tale, which makes the lesson hit harder. A Pixar movie's beats are precise. Woody must learn to accept a new friend, Marlin must learn to let go of control, and Carl must learn to live again. The studio then carefully polishes each scene to serve those arcs. But here's what's wild about Pixar's ethos. One of Pixar's directors, Lee Unkrich, once said, quote, "We don't ever finish a film. I could keep on making it better. We're just forced to release it." What this means is that Pixar's philosophy is built on perfectionism and structuralism, meaning that a movie is never really done. There's always room to rewrite, re-edit, and recut until nothing in the frame distracts from the story, because they feel that even great animation will never save a bad story. Co-founder of Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki, would likely nod to this, but he'd add that the real power of story can come from what happens between the beats. He refers to these pauses as ma, which basically means the intentional silence in a scene or inactivity between actions. If you just have non-stop action with no breathing space, it's just busyness. But if you take a moment, then the tension building in the film can grow into a wider dimension. This is what Miyazaki tells film critic Roger Ebert, and this defines Ghibli's philosophy. Ghibli's style is more laissez-faire by comparison, meaning their culture is about leaving things to take their own course without much interference. Miyazaki and his colleagues believe a story's power lives in its mood and world. Scenes that look unnecessary to Western eyes are often there to give viewers room to breathe, to contemplate what happens next. In Spirited Away, for instance, Chihiro takes an almost motionless train ride as the countryside drifts by. She doesn't speak and is almost entirely still. This scene lets the audience see what she is seeing and feel what she is feeling. That stillness, that ma, is intentional. Miyazaki says that without these pauses, the tension building in the film can't expand into a wider dimension. Okay, we understand their philosophies now, but how do they actually play out in their movies? Let's line up some of their most iconic scenes and see, frame by frame, how each studio brings its vision to life, starting with Pixar. Pixar's storytelling engine uses the classic three-act structure. The three-act story structure is a classic way to organize a movie's plot into a clear beginning, middle, and end. Act 1 sets up the world, characters, and central conflict, ending with a turning point that pushes the story forward. Act 2 is the longest section, where the protagonist faces escalating obstacles and challenges, leading to a crisis. Act 3 delivers the climax, where the main conflict is resolved, followed by a brief resolution that shows the aftermath. A prime example of this engine at work is Up. Its legendary opening sequence is an emotional masterclass, a self-contained tragedy that devastates audiences within minutes, and makes up a significant part of the first act. Through this setup, we see Carl Fredricksen's relationship with his wife Ellie, their shared dream of reaching Paradise Falls, and the loss that leaves him isolated. The legal order to force Carl from his home acts as the inciting incident, a direct challenge to his refusal to let go of the past. In a monumental act of defiance, he chooses to escape the developers, opting instead to fulfill the promise to his late wife. This decision physically launches Act 2, as Carl lifts his house with thousands of balloons and embarks on his journey.
So long, boys! I'll send you a postcard from Paradise Falls!
We are thrown into Carl's adventure here and introduced to a new world and new characters, specifically the young wilderness explorer Russell and the talking dog Doug. As Carl navigates this new world, his core beliefs are challenged, and his isolation is gradually eroded. This act is packed with a series of escalating challenges, from navigating a storm to encountering the film's antagonist, Charles Muntz. The central conflict of the act is Carl's struggle to reconcile his past with his present, a struggle that ends in the pivotal all is lost moment where he must choose between the physical weight of his memories, the house, and the life of his new friends. The resolution constitutes Act 3, with Carl making a decisive choice to save Russell and Kevin, shedding the literal and metaphorical baggage of his past. The climax is the final aerial battle with Muntz, which results in the antagonist's defeat. You see how the resolution is not the successful delivery of the house to Paradise Falls, but Carl finding a new purpose and a new family with Russell. This is because the journey had to end with the theme of moving forward and embracing new life. Other Pixar movies, such as Inside Out, Finding Nemo, Cars, and so on, used the same three-act structure as Up. And this is not a bad way to make a movie, right? These movies are all brilliant, but there's still a trick. Actually, several tricks that Ghibli uses that could have taken Pixar movies to God-level status. Ghibli's storytelling is a profound departure from the goal-oriented arcs of its Western counterparts. Instead of a linear journey driven by conflict, their narratives follow a structure known as Kisho Tenketsu. This four-part framework, Ki for introduction, Sho for development, Ten for twist, and Ketsu for conclusion, is about allowing a world to unfold and a character to grow through experience and discovery. There's usually no goal of the protagonist that ends with the fight and defeat of the antagonist. Spirited Away serves as a perfect example of this narrative structure in motion. Ki, the introduction, begins with a feeling of childish petulance. Chihiro is a passive, sullen girl as her family drives into an unknown but strange location. The first moment of note is her parents finding a feast of untouched food. When they are transformed into pigs, Chihiro is plunged into a strange reality with no idea of what to do next. This could have been a place that spells out a goal she has to achieve, like Pixar did when Nemo was separated from his father. But with Chihiro, we don't know yet what is happening. We don't know if she's dreaming or if the pigs in place of her parents were real or not. This is one structural difference Ghibli has with Pixar. But clear goal or not, the story of Spirited Away still needed to be developed beyond that point.
I see.
This is where the show, or the development act, comes in. It is where the story truly breathes. Chihiro must get her parents back, yes. But first, she must find work in the bustling bathhouse of the gods, a series of seemingly mundane tasks that are, in fact, the engine of her growth. The film's pacing is deliberate and unhurried. We watch her learn to scrub floors, clean baths, and navigate the intricate social world of the bathhouse. But while this might be considered filler for some, it really is not. Instead, it is a cinematic embodiment of Ghibli's philosophy of Ma. But there's more. The scene where Chihiro cleans the massive, filth-encrusted river spirit is a profound moment of labor and empathy, a spiritual cleansing that marks a significant internal shift for the little girl without spelling it out. We are shown her courage through the simple, honest work she performs instead of being told. This patient, observational storytelling continues in the iconic train ride sequence. Chihiro, No-Face, and their companions travel across a flooded landscape. The journey itself is a moment of meditation. There are no dramatic events and no dialogue, unlike the events Marlin experienced with the turtles during his ride to the Eastern Australian Current. In Spirited Away, there is just the hypnotic rhythm of the train and the quiet beauty of the world. This is a space for the viewer to exist alongside the characters, to feel the same sense of quiet, meditative state. Another interesting thing is how there's no rising action, and what we see moments later is the ten, or the twist. This arrives as a change in Chihiro's perspective. Her objective shifts from simply wanting to save herself and her parents to understanding Haku's true identity and wanting to save him. The final test, where Yubaba presents her with a line of pigs to identify her parents, is one that Chihiro passes because she is finally understood. Ketsu, or the conclusion, is similarly understated. Chihiro leaves the spirit world with her memories intact, but her parents have no recollection of the events. There is no triumph or public celebration. The change is internal and deeply personal, leaving the viewer to contemplate the quiet, lasting impact of her journey. This philosophy is perhaps most distilled in My Neighbor Totoro, a film with no antagonist, no clear goal, and no singular climactic battle. It exists almost entirely in the key and show stages. The narrative is a tapestry of small wonders and quiet fears. The film's deliberate pacing allows for a series of small, cherished moments. The girls exploring their new, dust bunny-filled house, Satsuki rushing to school, the simple, joyous act of planting seeds. But perhaps the most fitting representation of Ma is the famous bus stop scene, where Satsuki and Mei wait for their father. This was a complete masterclass in this approach. It is an extended moment of silence and stillness, broken only by the sound of the rain and the slow, majestic appearance of Totoro. The purpose of this scene has little to do with advancing the plot, but more with building a sense of wonder and connection. It is a moment that creates a sense of profound personal memory for the viewer. The story's only central conflict is the very real childhood fear of a parent being sick, and the closest the film gets to an all is lost moment is when Mei goes missing. Yet the resolution is equally quiet and community-driven, ending with the simple relief of finding a lost child. Notice how there is no villain, but the film leaves us with the warm, enduring feeling of having lived in that world for a time, a feeling that grows stronger with each return. Okay, you're probably thinking now, does a difference in story structure constitute superiority? Well, yes and no. The truth is, there are several things beyond just the structure that Ghibli does that Pixar doesn't. And they are the reasons why Ghibli will always succeed over most studios, especially Pixar. Truth is, in Pixar's pursuit of a perfect, emotionally engineered arc, its stories can become predictable. The all is lost moment, the character's triumphant return, and the clear resolution are no longer surprises, but expectations. The emotional fireworks, while spectacular, burn out quickly, often leaving behind a sense of having been entertained but not changed. The world of the film, once the final conflict is resolved, feels closed, its purpose fulfilled. Ghibli's stories, however, are a success precisely because they resist this clear closure. The journey is the entire point, and it never truly ends because life will always go on. Another thing is, life isn't all fireworks and punchlines. Most of it is pauses. It's the slow walk home, the time spent stirring soup, the moments when nothing much happens, but your mind is busy making sense of it all. Studio Ghibli understands that these stretches of stillness are where life actually unfolds. Pixar rarely lets us stay there. It treats stillness like an empty space that needs filling, often rushing to the next laugh or cry in the same way social media feeds us an endless loop of highs. Movies like Up and Inside Out may touch deep emotions, but they keep the rhythm tight, the stakes high, and the audience on cue. However, Ghibli trusts us to sit in the in-between without losing interest. In doing so, it captures a truth Pixar tends to skip. Life is not a string of climaxes. It's an ebb and flow, a balance of doing and being. And sometimes the most meaningful stories happen in the quiet. The difference becomes clear when you look at Up's now famous married life montage. It's a masterclass in emotional storytelling, compressing decades of Carl and Ellie's life into just a few minutes. Every beat is deliberate, every rise is followed by a fall. Yet even here, the tempo never lingers for too long. As soon as we process one moment, the next one arrives. The music swells or deflates, the cuts are quick, and before we've really sat in their happiness, the montage has already moved on to loss. This is effective for pacing, but it also means we don't get the same kind of unhurried stillness you'd find in a scene like May's bus stop wait. This is not to say Pixar can't slow down. It can, and Inside Out proves it. The scene where Bing Bong fades away is almost quiet.
Take her to the moon for me, okay?
But this is for the sake of an emotional gut punch. The stillness is weaponized to break us before moving back into action. In contrast, for Ghibli, sometimes nothing happens, and that's the beauty of it. Film scholars have a name for this: pillow shots, a term popularized by critic Noel Birch when describing Yasujiro Ozu's work. These are the transitional moments that don't advance the plot, but instead give the audience space to reflect. In psychology, this idea connects to stimulus-free time, which researchers have linked to deeper processing and emotional regulation. We need those gaps to make sense of what we've just experienced. Without them, stories can feel like emotional fast food, satisfying in the moment, but not as nourishing in the long run. Even in Toy Story, Pixar's very first feature, the pacing leans toward the kinetic. The moment Woody and Buzz were stranded at the gas station could have been a slow meditation on isolation, with both of them taking in the reality of being left behind. Instead, the dialogue keeps rolling, the plot machinery keeps clicking, and the story barrels forward. Compare that to Ghibli's Spirited Away, where Chihiro takes a quiet train ride across a flooded landscape. No jokes, no danger, no new information. Just a girl, her thoughts, and the sound of the tracks. And this is exactly how life is. But Pixar is just not as audacious to reflect it because they are afraid they would lose audience retention. They are more concerned about making money and pleasing the audience than creating truly unforgettable art. Ghibli, on the other hand, doesn't have this concern. Therefore, they often ground their ideas in moments pulled straight from reality. Miyazaki has even said that the famous stink spirit scene in Spirited Away was inspired by his own experience cleaning a polluted river.
I cleaned a river once, my local river, and there really was a bicycle.
Additionally, this fusion of the ordinary and the magical makes Ghibli's worlds feel uncannily real. As Johnny Thompson observes, Miyazaki's films are organic and subtle, as alive as the worlds they depict, and they reach us by quietly taking root in our imagination. Therefore, here's where Pixar could learn from Ghibli. Not every pause has to be a prelude to something big. Sometimes the pause is the scene. A Carl Fredricksen sitting alone in his chair, letting the light shift across the room. Joy in Inside Out, quietly watching Riley sleep. Woody leaning against a window, listening to the hum of the room. These moments could exist without pushing the story, but in doing so, they might give the story more weight. In a way, this is about trust. Ghibli trusts that you won't check your watch if nothing happens for 90 seconds. Pixar often assumes you might. The result is two different philosophies of engagement, one built on constant stimulation, the other on gentle patience. And maybe that's why Ghibli's films often feel like they stick with us differently. We remember the plot, but also the quiet. May's umbrella dripping, Chihiro's train ride, Kiki looking out over the city, these are emotional imprints. And when we walk away from the theater, those are the ones we carry into our own quiet moments, long after the noise has faded. This brings us to a new debate lighting up headlines, and once again, Ghibli comes out on top. But this time around, Disney is in the mix, and not for the right reasons. The controversy is about the softening or the pussification of villains, and you can watch a breakdown here right now.